Friends, you're in the military summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the 28-point plan that was provided by the United States of America. According to information we have, Kyiv is in shock, and key US administration figures were unaware of the Ukrainian plan until the very end, according to Bloomberg. Trump's special envoy Witkoff and Putin's special representative Dmitriev participated in the plan's preparation. According to Bloomberg, sources familiar with the situation, key officials, including Secretary of State Rubio, were not privy to the details of the process until the very end. Ukraine and its allies were shocked by the speed with which the US is pushing through the peace plan. So furthermore, we have a very interesting update from Europe. Today we got a report that European countries are trying to change this peace plan. Europe wants to change at least 4 points of Trump's peace plan, according to Bild. They insist on deleting on one of the key points, the territorial division, including the recognition of the inside Donetsk region and Crimea as a Russian territory. The statement emphasizes the position that borders should not be changed by force. Europe also considers reducing the Ukraine army to 600,000 troops risky. Separately, they note doubts about the reliability of any formal security guarantees from Russia, as previous agreements have already been violated. Another issue concerns frozen Russian assets. Europeans oppose any mechanism that would allow the Kremlin to benefit from them. According to Trump's plan, some assets are used to restore Ukraine under US control, while others are invested in joint US-Russian projects. So as you can see, Europe is unhappy with the situation. Most likely they will try to change this. And according to information we have, they will going to try to change this today on the territory of Switzerland, on the territory of Geneva. A meeting of US, European Union and Ukrainian representatives on the peace plan will take place on Sunday in Geneva, so today. This was reported by the German publication citing sources in German government. Earlier, Zelensky's office stated that the talks would take place in Switzerland. Furthermore, according to information we have, Rubio and Witkoff will take part in talks in Geneva on the settlement in Ukraine from the US side. So today everything will be resolved, and today it is very important whether the European leaders in Ukraine are forced to the Marco Rubio and Witkoff to change their minds and their position regarding this agreement. So if they can do this, of course, they will change this peace plan significantly, and most likely this peace plan would be rejected by the Russian Federation in the next week, because I would like to remind you that Zelensky has time just until the 27th of November of 2025. After this date, he must accept the plan or anything that led from this plan, and then the generals of the United States of America will go to the Russian Federation, where they will try to negotiate with the Russians and to force them to accept this plan as well. So we have less and less days before the entire situation will be resolved. Another important thing is that the President of the United States of America also made lots of very interesting statements on this matter. Trump said that US plan is not a final offer to Ukraine. Is this your final offer to Ukraine? No. What happens if Zelensky doesn't agree to your peace plan? Then he can continue to fight as hard as he can. But another important thing that Trump noted that the next agreement and the next proposal would be much worse in comparison with the current one. So let's wait and see what is going to be next, but it seems that nobody is going to accept Trump's plan, at least the Europeans and Ukraine itself. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very interesting updates. So this is the map by the end of the 22nd of November of 2025. The Russians, according to information we have, just entered the settlements of Chervony, Zeleny Gai, Zatishye, and by the morning of the 23rd of November of 2025, according to different mappers, the Russians managed to secure the settlement of Zeleny Gai completely, and the Russians managed to capture up to 50% of Chervony. So we are waiting for confirmations, but as for the confirmations, during the previous 24 hours, the main confirmations of additional progress on the ground are coming from the northern flank of the Gulay Polye direction. This is the situation, for example, by the end of the 22nd of November. And if you remember, just yesterday, the Russians reported that they managed to secure the settlement of Novo Zaporozhye, and the Russian sources published this video where we can see how exactly the fightings were taking place for the territory. And by the morning of the 23rd of November, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation and several pro-Russian sources stated that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to secure two villages, the village of Tykhe and the village of Vidradne. And Russians this morning published this video where we can see how the clashes were taking place for these two settlements. In this video, we can see once again exactly the territories that were captured and secured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And of course, we can see how exactly the fighting and the clashes were taking place on the territory of these two villages. So here we can see how Russians were attacking Ukraine with aviation and how Russians were raising Russian flags through the settlement of Tykhe. Another important thing that I would like to point to attention that despite the fact that pro-Russian sources and the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the village of Vidradne was also secured and cleared by Russia, we still haven't received anything that can confirm this. We are talking about, of course, videos and geolocations, which means that most likely there are still very heavy clashes, and that it's still probably not safe to publish any video and to leave houses, leave strongholds, because anytime you can be attacked by Ukrainian FPV drones. Anyway, this is a very interesting update. We see that the Russians continue their offensive, and we see that the Russians are tasked right now to establish complete control over every single settlement, every single village across and through the river of Volcha. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk agglomeration. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very interesting updates, and as you can see, we have huge changes on the ground. First, let's talk about the settlement of Vidradne. Today, pro-Ukrainian sources published this video, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation on the Pokrovskaya mine. So this is an Ukrainian drone that was flying, let's say, above the territory, searching for Russian soldiers. And for example, this episode took place exactly inside of this building. Furthermore, several pro-Russian sources reported that these positions, this stronghold was also captured by Russians. So based on this video, we came to the conclusion that this territory is already under complete Russian control. So that is why we adjusted the map, this part under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, very interesting updates are coming from the city of Pokrovsk itself. So as you can see, we have adjusted the map, and now we have created a full and complete surroundment of the armed forces of Ukraine on the territory of the city by the name of Mirnograd. So before we start, let's compare the map between the dates. So this is the situation by the end of the 22nd of November of 2025. We just received a report that Russians entered the city of Mirnograd from the west, and today we got report that Russians managed to improve their positions once again to the west of the city of Mirnograd, and the Russians managed to probably establish complete control over the TO515 road between the city of Rodinska and the city of Pokrovsk itself. So now we can see that there is a complete physical control over this territory, which means that Ukrainians are no longer able to use these roads for evacuation. We came to this conclusion based on the video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians of the 25th Airborne Brigade were attacking Russian positions exactly along the Zaporozhskaya Street. So these territories, this video was geolocated exactly at this point. Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, the territory of this stronghold, and based on this video we came to the conclusion that the Russians control the road TO515, which means that the settlement of Mirnograd was completely physically surrounded by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, several neutral mappers stated that Russians finished the battle for the most northern part of the city of Pokrovsk. So these are the changes on the map between the dates. So if you remember yesterday, I was telling you that Ukrainians controlled up to 5% of the city of Mirnograd, of the city of Pokrovsk. But now, according to these latest changes, we see that Ukrainians lost control over every single square kilometer of the city of Pokrovsk, and Russians managed to capture the city completely. Maybe there are still pockets of resistance, small positions, some buildings with Ukrainians that are trying to hide from Russian soldiers and trying to escape this city in the northwestern direction, but these small pockets doesn't change the entire picture. We believe that in coming days the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will announce complete control over the territory. So maybe this is going to happen today because, as you know, as we discussed in the first part of the video, that today there's going to be a meeting on the territory of Switzerland, so the Russians may announce complete control over the city of Pokrovsk today, right before the meeting starts or something like this, or Russians will announce complete control over the city of Pokrovsk by the 27th of November of 2025, when Zelensky has a deadline for signing of this Trump 28-point plan. So let's wait and see, but obviously this is going to happen within the next 5 days. Furthermore, during the previous night, we received changes, a very interesting video from the settlement of Rodinska. In this video, we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians across the northern part of the city of Rodinska, and based on this video, we came to the conclusion that the Russians currently regaining their lost positions in this area. So this is the situation by the end of the 22nd of November, and this is the situation by the end of the 23rd of November. The Russians continue offensive, and the Russians continue forcing Ukrainians to fall back from the territory of the settlement. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction. As we discussed during the previous videos, the Russians began offensive operation from the southwestern direction, and today this information was confirmed by different mappers. Yesterday this information was reported by several pro-Russian sources. They stated that the Russians began advancing in the direction of the city of Konstantinovka along M32 road, and today this information was also confirmed by different neutral mappers. Furthermore, the Russians managed to maintain the line and to shorten the distances along the Tykhe Street between the settlements of Ivano-Polye and the southeastern part of Konstantinovka. So as you can see, this dense network of the fortifications was captured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. So we see that the battle for Konstantinovka enters its intensive part, and most likely in coming days we're going to get more and more updates exactly from this area. Now let's discuss the situation in the Liman-Sivers direction. I would like to remind you that just yesterday the Russians stated that they managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Zvanovka, and Russian sources published this video where we could see how Russians were raising a flag in the most northern part of the settlement. Today we got report and additional clarifications. So the Russians captured everything to the south and on their side of the river of Bakhmutka. As for the Liman direction, during the previous 12 hours, we haven't received anything special. Let's wait for additional updates. Maybe today we're gonna get some. Now let's discuss the situation in the Barova direction. During the previous 12 hours, the Russians improved their position significantly, as you can see. This is the situation by the end of the 22nd of November, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 23rd of November. During the previous days, the Russians carried out a very powerful offensive operation with the purpose to attack the settlement of Boguslavka from behind. The Russians were using hundreds of soldiers for these purposes. This video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Russians were moving in the direction of the settlement of Boguslavka from the south. So as you can see here, we can find lots of Russian soldiers that were entering the settlement of Boguslavka and how Russians were securing the territory. Later, Ukrainians sent FPV drones with the purpose to attack Russian soldiers, let's say on the territory of this side of Boguslavka, but the Russians, according to information we have, managed to dig in deeper. So the battle for the village has begun, and most likely Ukrainians will not be able to show any resistance. When Russians finish the battle for Boguslavka, they will continue offensive operation further towards the settlement by the name of Barova. So as we can see, the battle for the central Kupiansk direction has begun. The Russians will try to capture these territories and to force Ukrainians to fall back from this side of the river Voskol. As for the city of Kupiansk, during the previous 12 hours, we haven't received anything changes, special, just small changes on the ground, both in Russian and Ukrainian favor without any confirmation. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.